name is Brian, and I'm here to hack on some Tiger Beetle. Just give me 1 second because I kind of ran in here and jumped on stream without being totally prepared. Gotta go look at my audio stuff over here and make sure it's all the buttons are flipped in the correct ways. Okay, I think everything's flipped. Hi, my name is Brian. I'm here to do some hacking on Tiger Beetle. On this stream, we've been working on creating a Rust client for the Tiger Beetle financial database. Tiger Beetle is written in Zig, and it has clients for most languages you might want to interact with it in, including Python, Java, JavaScript, etc. But this one's in Rust. All these clients that we have in Tiger Beetle are bindings to an underlying Zig library called TB client. And so this is a FFI bindings project. In the future, we may do a pure Rust client for performance and ergonomic integration reasons, but this one's bindings. And we have been doing this for more than 2 months, almost 3 months, 20 streams. And I've just got all the 20 streams, previous streams, uploaded to YouTube. Not quite published yet, but they're all ready to go. Just kind of putting those, title cards and stuff like that on there. I don't know much about YouTube or streaming, but it's in the pipeline. But this project is kind of at our first big checkpoint. We're just preparing to submit a pull request to get this initial patch reviewed. And this initial patch is kind of a MVP, minimum viable product. In fact, it's not even a minimum viable product because I don't want anybody to use it yet. I wouldn't call it production ready, but the shape of the API is there and it appears to all work. We don't have an extensive test suite, and there's all kinds of low-hanging performance fruit here still, but the API, looks good. And so I want people to, give it a look and see how it works for them. And almost the only thing left at this point is submitting the PR. So this stream is about submitting a PR. Not going to be a lot of coding today. But, a PR is a big part of the real world programming process. So we're going to do it all on stream. Let's go find the code. And I need to, shoot. I need to mess with my windows here a bit. Don't let me forget to put up our windows. Again, like I said, I just kind of ran in here and turned the stream on and not really prepared. So I'm just kind of filling up your screen with my windows. Okay. So here's our Tiger Beetle repo, and it's been almost a week again. I'm sorry, y'all. Almost a week since I've hacked on this last. So the first thing we're going to do is just rebase and get everything up to date. And at this stage, we got to be rebasing all the time because we are converging quickly on a pull request. And let me make sure I know where we are. Yep, we got one commit here that contains the whole thing. A fetch origin, get rebase origin main. So Mr. Olex, this is a irregular stream. I know it would be nice to have a consistent schedule, but right now I'm just kind of jumping on any time that I feel emotionally prepared, psychologically capable of doing this thing on stream. I would like to schedule like at least 1 hour or one session a week that happens at a predictable time, but I've been saying that the whole run of this stream and have not done it yet. So right now I just kind of announced like 10 minutes ahead of time I'm about to go stream. And of course this is a Tiger Beetle Twitch channel, which is Tiger Beetle is normally about Zig stuff, but this particular stream at the moment is mostly all Rust stuff. All right, so we've got some kind of problem. All right, this thing. So just last time we were kind of preparing for the pull request, and I talked about this chunk of code extensively in the last stream. and how this particular formatting, so you can see here, I changed, what did I do? I added an extension because we're adding some Rust code to the Tiger Beetle project. So I added like some TOML. TOML is a configuration format used by Rust, and I also added the RS extension. This particular table we're looking at is kind of like exceptions to the rules of the tidy. There's a big tidy script that runs and says like violations in Zig style mainly. But this this table here is like, these are the allowed file extensions within the repo. And yeah, I see you, Mr. Olex. I'll get you in 1 second. Just let me finish up with this rant about this formatting. So this big table here, it's kind of like a, it's formatted very pretty. And depending on how you structure your formatting, the Zig format tool will just give you this beautiful table. And it looks beautiful, but what happens with this particular type of formatting is that if anybody touches one of these entries, the whole table gets reformatted. So now my diff, which should, logically might just be this RS file, this one thing, turns into a diff of all of this stuff. So I'm not a fan of this formatting. And I've mentioned this last time, I've previously made patches to high contention tables within the Tiger Beetle code base to turn this formatting off. Just for this exact reason. Now I have to visually scan through here and figure out, what happened here. All right, Mr. Olex, the artist that does the Tiger Beetle banners. Yeah, Tiger Beetle is really cool. It's a very small team, but it's a team that is invested in like the art side of the project. So Tiger Beetle has, a very strong visual identity, because it hires, I think we have 2 artists on staff, and I'm not sure exactly who does which, but there's one guy named Joy Mox. He does all the kind of like anime style characters, like all those tiger beetles with space helmets and stuff is all Joy. And Joy also does, I know he's recently done like the LinkedIn banner, might have done the YouTube banner. But I don't know specifically what you're referring to with the banner you're asking about, but it's probably Joy Mox. JoyMachs. I assume they have some kind of web presence. You can go check out their portfolio. Rolex. Oh, I see. Not Mr. Olex. Thank you for the correction, Rolex. Okay. Yep, Joy Mox. There's another guy on the team, Fabio. I'm going to screw up if I really attempt to get everybody's name right. Fabio Arnold, I think, also does a bunch of the art for Tiger Beetle. Okay, so I got to fix this diff here. And so now I just basically have to rework this whole diff from scratch, take the original code and just do the diff again. So this is in Tiger Beetle source tidy. And so I'm just going to go take head, which is upstream. And I think the things that I did here was change RS and TOML. I'm just going to just do it again. PQR, and I got to put them in alpha. Also, I got to do these alphabetically. And with this formatting, I got to kind of scan in 2 directions, or if it was just a big column, the disk would be smaller and it would be much easier to scan for alphabetical ordering. RS, QRS dot RS. Cool. Tell me what you think of their stuff. I haven't actually looked at Joy's portfolio, but very talented artist. .rs and then .toml. Where does .toml live here? I was watching, so while I was preparing the YouTube playlist, I was, watching some of my old performances, and I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm not like super ashamed of my voice or my appearance or anything like that. I'm kind of okay with, my public speaking. But I noticed that I kind of get into like a tendency of like really having like a low amount of projection, just kind of like softly, rumbling with my speech, which is nice for the vocal cords, but not a very assertive presentation on some of my past streams. Oh, thank you, Mr. Rolex. Mr. Rolex. Yeah, but a big part of this project is just kind of like teaching myself how to do more assertive public speaking. Okay, so we got this done. I think this is right. So let's do a Zig. Hey, we're doing some Zig on stream on our Zig projects Twitch. So I think I can do a build check here and then pass it tidy. I want to make sure this compiles and that the tidy check, which is this is part of, actually works. Okay, seems to work. And now I can just continue the rebase. And now I can run Zig format to fix the formatting of that table. And, if you've paid attention to this stream before, you know that I only have a cursory knowledge of Zig. I'm still a Zig beginner. Okay, so that changed our diff. And again, I can't really evaluate very easily whether this is correct, but it's probably correct. I'll just amend that. Now, since we've done a fairly big rebase here, we should probably just go run, not the Tiger Beetle test suite, but let's run the tests for our bindings. This is in source clients Rust. Just run cargo test here. And again, we have the Rust build system hooked up to the Zig build system, so this should rebuild our Zig code. Mr. Olex, I've been working on Tiger Beetle for about a year now. So I've done Zig programming, but I don't work full-time. So I don't really feel like I'm super experienced with Zig, but I've written real patches for real code for Zig, but don't understand it super deeply. And I don't do a lot of Zig in my free time yet, at least. But I'm hoping that, okay, so our Rust test passed, so looks like we're all good, all caught up. Let's go find our Rust code. Yeah, I'm hoping that after this big Rust stream, I can pivot to a new project that is actually doing Zig stuff on the Tiger Beetle Twitch. I think that would be more appropriate for Tiger Beetle. I feel like we should be, championing the Zig banner or something like that. Tiger Beetle source clients Rust. All right, and almost everything of interest here is in lib.rs. And I do have a bunch of to-dos here. I kind of want to copy these over to somewhere else where I can keep them. But I don't know where to do that on stream, so I'm just going to push this to another branch that I can come back to later. Because the PR, I don't want to just keep this personal to-do list in the PR. This is future post-PR work. So I'm going to push this to, what is this called? Rust client old to-do. And we have to do, we have to name this more appropriately because, more precisely because it doesn't already exist and there's no tracking branch here. I think it's refs heads is the path to it. Nope. Oh, I'm not pushing anything to it. Yes, so this stream, this series of streams is creating the Rust bindings for the Tiger Beetle client. So you'll be able to, as a consumer of a Tiger Beetle, you'll be able to connect and talk to the Tiger Beetle server from a Rust program. This is pushing head to Rust client old to do. Okay, now we back that up somewhere. Get rid of this to do. And again, this stream is basically, I am determined to get the PR in on this stream. So just doing some last second cleanup. And I noticed this typo yesterday, bindings. the TB client, let's see what this says. This is kind of a hack here. The TB client completion context is unused by the Rust bindings. Okay, that makes sense. Conversions. Okay. There's one other thing in this code that is bugging me right now. All right, I think we just fixed a typo here. Going to commit that. And it's something we've talked about on the stream many times, is this monster of a function. This is a really gnarly function. And I'm expecting this to raise eyebrows in a PR review. And last time we were debugging something around this function, and the name of these two things really threw me for a loop. Because the word result in Rust has very strong connotations. It's a very prominent type. But these two type parameters don't actually refer to Rust result types, even though the name of this is Rust result. So I think I want to clean up these names and maybe document a little bit what this does. And even every time I look at this function, I have to go back and kind of like reverse engineer what this function does. So this collects the results of a query into a vector while interpreting gaps in the query results. So the way the Tiger Beetle protocol works is that when we submit a query that might have multiple results, each particular query uses the empty result for some purpose as an optimization. So if you submit like a request that contains 50 point queries for looking up accounts, you might get 30 results back. And the result you didn't get still have some semantic meaning applied to them. You just have to kind of like pull that meaning out of thin air based on the query you're doing. So this function is to handle that instead of punting that to the user and forcing them to like look at my inputs and look at my results and figure out how they correlate. This function just does that for you. But the semantics are slightly different for every single query. And that's why this is so generic. But anyway, what this does is it takes our completion message, which is just like everything that we got back from a query. And then this is a little function, a closure, not a closure, just a function that figures out whether a particular result item is for a particular input event item. Because you have to like do parallel iteration over the input and over the results. And we look at them both at the same time and kind of like step through them. And then this defines a type, a value to stand in for the empty result. So if we don't see a result, then the actual result is whatever this value is. And then if we do see a result, this is a little function that interprets it into the correct type. So the C result and this Rust result. I'm going to go look real quick at this function that calls it and see what those types map to. It's an error of this. So the result wrapper here, like the result wrapper, generic type named result wrapper becomes the concrete result of nil of create transfer result here. And the word result is just overloaded so hard here. It's just terrible. I'm really not sure how to do this better. Rust result type, C result, intermediate result. This is kind of like a final result. This actually does end up being a Rust result. This is called Rust result because in the underlying C API, this type is called a result. And this is the Rust mapping of this C type that is called result in the C API. It's just a terrible mess. Maybe there's nothing here I can do except write a little bit of docs here that just explain this. Yeah, I'm just going to try to document this. Of CAPI Tiger Beetle query results into a vector of Rust values, one for each input event. And now we need to kind of explain this because, like, I feel like that captures a lot of it for somebody who really understands the Tiger Beetle protocol. All right, so queries like account lookup accept a vector of events, and the server returns a vector of results. These results, though, have holes in them. Empty result values that need to be interpreted in a specific way. Instead of having the user interpret the holes in the results, we just do it for them for every type of request. We don't need the word just there. That's just doesn't add any meaning. Just be like a succinct. All right. And then I'll add like a little documentation section, a custom documentation section for type parameters. All right, so the C event, the input event type in the C API. I feel like I need to add a little more explanation. This method does parallel iteration. I don't know if parallel iteration is actually the right phrase here because parallel is a very loaded word. Over the input events and the output requests as returned by TV client. Correlates the output results, correlates the results to the events, and converts the C result types to a Rust result type, and inserts new Rust result types for each hole returned by the server. That's a pretty good explanation. C result. I put an example here too. That'll be very clear for people who understand Tiger Beetle. So an example would be, let's look at create accounts. And I can format this on another line here. e.g. tb account t. The result returned by the server. e.g. let's see, what does our create accounts return? TB account T, TB create accounts result T. TB create accounts result T. Then Rust result. The corresponding Rust definition for C result. And then here I got to say, like, I was second guessing this uneven indentation here. It looks pretty gross. I'm going to move this back down here. Note this is not a Rust result type. The result name is in relation to the C result type, which have result names in the C API. Example. This is probably TB create account results T. I'm guessing this is struct. Oh, it's right there. It was right there on this line. Create account result. Create account. Create accounts result or create account result? What? Your chat. So this the C type is called create accounts result. So a single request creates multiple accounts, but then in return you get multiple create accounts result. So this is the result of creating one account, but it's called create accounts result. Let's look at struct create accounts. Struct, oh, it's probably an enum create account result, create accounts result. This is create transfer result, create accounts result. Is there a corresponding, is the C, yeah, the C type is also pluralized. This is, naming is so annoying. I'm kind of feeling like I need to rename the Rust types here. All right. I swear we're going to get this PR in today. I'm just coping now, probably. Rename, pluralize, adding a new to-do section here. Pluralize, create account result, and create transfer result. So down here is this create account result. And then let's just keep going. Get this documentation for this function working. Rust result wrapper. The final result query result. Requests and results. Requests, response. Response is the word I want to use here for this disambiguation. Like, we've got a server, we make requests and we get responses. I don't want to keep overloading the word result. Response for each event. Created from Rust result. This probably is a Rust result type. Okay. This is probably thoroughly sufficient. the person who's going to review this code is a Rust genius too. So hopefully he will just get it. I'm thinking I might have Matt Clad come on the stream and do a review of this PR on stream with me. Could be interesting and or fun and or stressful to have Matt Clad tearing apart my code to my face. A lot of times with PRs, I have to take several approaches to the PR to kind of digest what people are saying on it. Like I'll look at a PR and be like, no, he didn't understand what I was saying at all. And instead of typing what I'm thinking, I go to dinner or something and then come back and collect my empathy and type something reasonable. Okay, this all seems okay to me. Mr. Rolex, I think that many recruiters do value open source contributions, especially for somebody who is young and doesn't have an established history to look back to. What matters for a lot of people, in my opinion, I'm not really the right person to ask about this, is that you appear to be someone who is into the code, into the field, and wants to push forward. Not necessarily just by, participating in open source, but just that you have stuff going on and that if it was up to you and your life and money didn't depend on it, you would still be coding. Seeing someone who come in who is into software is kind of makes me feel good about, young coders, seeing that they're just doing something coding related. And open source contributions are just, one part of that signal, but a very useful and low barrier to entry way for people to get into stuff. But it really matters for it to be genuine, though. You really got to be into it. A lot of people, GitHub is kind of plagued with drive-by contributions that are just garbage. Not plagued, but it happens all the time that you'll get PRs that change a little bit of nonsense text to something else that is more nonsense, and that's just dumb. That's terrible. It just ticks those green boxes on your GitHub stats, but it's not genuine. And recruiters, what I want to look for in young coders is enthusiasm, that they're just they love the craft, and open source contributions are what part of that signal. Mr. Rolex, do you code in Rust? I didn't catch it if you said so. Or are you primarily a Zig coder? Or something else? All right, let's tackle this last to-do that we added. Create account result. Yeah, I'm just kind of shocked that I had this oversight here. I've spent a lot of time on these streams just comparing names and making sure I got all the naming sensible. Let's go look at the TB client header file and just double check that this type is actually pluralized. TB create accounts result. Okay, oh, no. TB create accounts result. Yeah, these two types are not a one-to-one. These two types are not a one-to-one correspondence. They're slightly different. The enum I've created in Rust corresponds to this result code, which is not reflected in the type signature in the CABI, kind of frustratingly. But it is probably right up here, this C enum. And this is called TB create account result singular. And the C struct that wraps it is called create accounts result plural. I'm really ready to do a table flip here. Why? Why is there a difference here? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe just, human fallibility, or maybe there's some logic to it that the original author had, that this is pluralized and this is not pluralized, but they both represent like the same concept. Anyway, I'm happy that I've done my due diligence. If somebody notices and asks, they can refer to the stream. Yeah, Rust is got a lot of momentum, but in a niche. It's not widely used enough to just, get jobs in Rust. I see people on Reddit talking about it all the time, like even now. It's apparently pretty hard to just find Rust jobs. There are quite a lot of them, but not enough for the demand for sure. Rust and C. I still kind of like C. Not much, but kind of. Okay, I need to do cargo format, cargo Clippy, make sure these are going to pass that stuff. One thing I haven't set up here is any CI for this project, right? I'll have to ask for help in the PR, but we can make sure it's at least cargo format clean and cargo Clippy clean. Sorry, I'm getting Zig format and cargo format confused. All right, no changes. And we can say cargo Clippy. Oh, new Clippy problems. Oh. The borrowed expression implements the required traits. Oh, what is all that? Oh my gosh, I'm glad we ran this. What's your dream company, Mr. Rolex? I'm curious who is using Rust that you're following. There are quite a lot of companies that do use Rust. What is all this stuff? How did this happen? How did this happen? Maybe I upgraded Rust and it gained new. I have ranted several times on this stream about Clippy. I like ranting about Clippy. I mean, I don't love ranting about Clippy because, like, humans made Clippy and are proud of their work, and it is also useful. It is also useful, but it is also very annoying. All right. Yeah, just go through these one by one and look at them. NXP. I don't know NXP. Interesting. What do they do? All right, so build script. Yeah, I'm so bummed. I thought we had this all ready to go. Rust, build script. Line 120. This must be a new lint. I've never seen this before. I've never seen this before. Let's go look at this lint. Let's go read the docs for this lint, just to satisfy our curiosity. I think that was the right key to copy that. Let's go over to the webs. Like maybe this lint has always existed and I've just never noticed it before. And the SEO for this was not great. Here's the actual link we want. And what was this called? Needless borrows. How do I search Clippy's thing here? There we are. Needless borrows for generic args. Oh, I was hoping this would tell me like when this was introduced. Yeah, maybe it's always been there and I just haven't noticed. Like this is a sensible, very sensible lint. Just don't use extra ampersands when you don't need them. All right, back to the code. Let's just do what the machine tells us to do. Oh, TCP stream. Thank you. Let's go back over there and do what you were just saying. Clippy. Is it in our history? There it is. TCP stream says it's at the bottom. Oh, you're totally right. I thought this was some kind of like page-wide footer. Machine applicable. That's neat. I wonder what tool does that. I assume this means like there is some Rust tool that'll just do this for us. Huh, doesn't say for sure. Let's go look at Clippy. And anyway, to your point, this was introduced in 1.7.4, which is not super recent. There is some Rust tool that is like used for doing at least major version upgrades that will do a, oh, NXP, of course. I know what you're talking about now. How did you say semiconductor? That's neat that they're using Rust. Interesting. Lost my train of thought. Oops. All right, back to the code. Real quick, I'm just going to run Clippy help, cargo Clippy, and just see if it has an obvious way to just do it. Yeah, automatically apply lint suggestions. I never do this, mostly because I don't trust Clippy. But I kind of want to see if it'll just fix this. Revert whatever I did there accidentally. And let's say cargo Clippy fix. Actually, let's not do that yet. First, let's go read some of the other things it's complaining about. I at least want to know. All right, so it's got this issue here about the needless borrow. Useless use of format. Again, I feel like I've never seen that one. Build target. That makes sense. Build target toString. ToString is such a common operation that I like to shorten it when I can. Super ugly. But format is not arguably better than toString. I have my own kind of Rust framework that I use for my personal projects, and I have shortcuts for this kind of thing, like operations that just coerce things that are just cause noise in the code. Question mark is useless here. They want me to remove the OK. Yeah, okay. I don't love this. In general, if I'm returning a result in a function, I want to see that final OK. It's kind of iffy stylistically, but I do like to see like a final OK at the end of a result function. But Clippy wants me to do this, so we're going to do this for this project. In my own personal projects, I am trying to get in the habit of like saying no and customizing Clippy. Okay, question marks, question marks, question marks, question marks, question marks. Explicit lifetimes. Submit get account transfers. So we've seen this lint before and turned it off, because in this case, like, we thought pretty hard about the lifetimes in this function, and there's so many elision rules here and desugaring rules in play in this function signature that like I wouldn't trust myself to understand what the elision rules do here for lifetimes. But you can see our Clippy is saying like we don't need to specify tick static or tick s here, because the elision rules, like, that is the default for all these lifetimes. But for the sake of documentation, I really wanted these lifetimes, and we're going to keep these. I'm not going to do this. But I thought we had already turned this off. I remember we spent like a half hour probably just reading the docs for how elision works and how elision works when you add infiltrate returns, and how this new use lifetime feature works that was introduced just this year, last year. Yeah, this is a very complicated signature. I mean, it's not even on the surface. This is not a very complicated signature, but I still want it to be very explicit what the lifetimes that are captured are. All right, so that's back in our library. And I guess during our cleanup, I must have turned this lint back on, maybe accidentally. But I want to say allow needless lifetimes. Yeah, I think I must have just deleted this by accident. And this is a crate level attribute, so we put a bang there. And I'll add back a comment. Explicit lifetimes for documentation. Readability. All right, let's go back through and, oh, not Lippy, Clippy. Just go through and see if there's any other types of lints. Okay, now let's commit what we got, and then let's just ask Clippy to fix this and see what it does. Oh man, hacking on Rust in Romania would be pretty cool. Just hanging out over there and doing some Rust programming. I've not been to Romania, but I have several friends. I have had several friends who have lived in Romania and been Romanians. Never visited yet. All right, so what we want to do here is we want to ask Clippy to just fix everything for us. And again, I don't think I've ever done this before. Fix. Oh, it's a process. It's a whole thing. I'm just going to step back here and dance around for a second. Turn on some music. Can I do that? Is my music working? My music is not working. Oops. There's the music. I should have a pre-stream checklist to make sure everything is actually set up and working. I was just thinking that today. I didn't even do a sound check today. Okay. Looks like we are done doing that. Git status, git diff. Why is there a, oh, never mind. Looking at this diff here. Clippy changed something in tests. I didn't even notice that it was saying anything about tests. But let's look at what Clippy did. Yep. It did exactly the thing it said it wanted to do. This is all fine. That's nice. In Rust, you don't have to repeat field names when you're initializing a field if the local variable has the same name. Which is, good and bad. It's just a tiny little bit of extra complexity in the language. It's a very small amount of complexity, but something you got to learn. Okay, interesting. It removes some clones. I didn't even see all these lints. That's interesting. Anyway, let's run that test again. Oh, yeah, test. All right, our one test is still working. Let's commit all that. Now we are ready to make a PR, and now I'm tired and I'm going to have a hard time writing this PR. But let's get it started. This is the thing that I committed to doing today. All right, we're going to push, make sure the code is still on screen. Push, Burson, Rust client. We got a force push. And all right, probably the rest of the stream chat is just going to be looking at GitHub and typing stuff. Just warning you now, it's going to be a boring one. Not that that's like a problem with streaming. Streaming is often very boring. Sometimes that's like the whole point, is to be boring. All right, let's go over to Tiger Beetle. And oh shoot, you know what I haven't done here? I have not set up this browser profile to actually have my I'm not logged in. I am not logged in here. Give me a second to think about whether I have all the things over here to log in and whether I can do it without accidentally leaking anything on stream. Yeah, this is another thing I should have on my checklist. Make sure you're logged into, well, I guess I haven't needed to be logged into GitHub on stream. All right, I think I can do this. All right, chat, I'm going to leave you with some jams and a be right back screen for just 1 minute while I get all securely logged in. Give me a second. Mic off, mic off. Okay, that was easy. You know, GitHub, a lot of services I wouldn't think too hard about logging in on stream, but like GitHub is one of the key ones. Cannot screw up my GitHub security. And hey, Jade, the developer. So I know, like, my GitHub is like very central to my programming life, and more than just my programming life. I got so much on here, and now that my browser profile is logged in with my GitHub, there are things that I could click on the screen that I wouldn't want to be public. I mean, most of my work is public on GitHub, but I do have private repos. Anyway, I think everything is okay right now. I think I've done it the right way. All right, here's the Tiger Beetle pull requests, and I'm just kind of looking at what the recent PRs are. Mr. Rolex, what aliens are you referring to? Are you making a joke that I don't understand? Sorry, I forgot about the music. You don't need jams right now. Yep, pull request. Add an initial Rust client. All right, so when I make a pull request, the amount of effort I put into it really depends on the context. Like how receptive I expect people to be to it, how complex the PR is. Like in this case, I expect people to be very receptive because the Tiger Beetle team has asked me to do this project. But it's also a fairly chunky project, and there's a lot of caveats here. So there's a lot of explanation I think I need to do here in order to hopefully stem off criticism. Oh yeah, my GitHub is very top secret. I got important stuff going on in my GitHub. You're not allowed to know about it. You'll know about it someday when I announce my big plans. I got big plans. Always got plans. Yeah, so in this case, like if it's a small PR and I know the developer is going to be receptive, you can try to say very little and get away with it. But here I think I need some explanation because there's a lot of caveats to this code and it's not ready yet. And I would like the reviewers to read what I say and kind of understand where I'm coming from with my code before they just tear it apart. But like I said before, like oftentimes no matter how much effort you put into like explaining a PR perfectly, oftentimes a reviewer will just go through and not really digest that information. So in some senses, too much explanation on a PR is worse than not enough. Like If it's too much, then they'll probably just eyes glaze over. They're not going to pay attention. But what I'm going to do is just look at what I got. So I added a client Rust directory. Almost everything in this PR is in our own directory, so we're kind of low friction to accept this. Lock files, not interesting. So our TOML file. Metadata here is not complete. This isn't enough to publish to crates.io, but we're not going to publish to crates.io yet. These dependencies, pretty good dependencies. Minimum set of dependencies. Build dependencies matter less. Dev dependencies just for tests. It's the README that I wrote. Title go. That's wrong. This is why we proofread before we submit the PR. Let's go back to the code. Going back to the code. This README. This is, again, the README files for these clients, as we mentioned before, are part of the holistic integrated documentation system that feeds into the website. So there's some special conventions used that I don't really understand yet. But for this PR, I'm hoping the reviewers will not make me understand that yet, since we're not going to publicize this or push it to the website yet. Let's see, git push, we need a force push. Go back to our PR. That is not the PR, that's nothing. That's where the PR is going to live. Let's refresh this. And there's our fix. Target Beetle client for Rust is our work in progress client for hyperlink exists. Not production ready. It must be built from a full Target Beetle source checkout. Target Beetle path. That looks plausible. Why is this formatted wrong down here? This is not a closed quote. Okay. Proofreading. I'm pretty bad at proofreading. I don't do it enough. I mean, I never run a spell check, basically. Path to Target Beetle. That looks correct. Commit. Push. Go back to the browser. Let's refresh this. That's annoying that it always jumps back to the top. Okay, this is all formatted correctly. This looks plausible. Looks plausible. Again, this whole README file is going to have to be rewritten for production. This is just kind of a placeholder. All right, here's our build script. We've looked at this so many times, I'm not going to pour over this again. Part of doing my own review of my own PR is to refresh, reload it all into my brain and remember what I think I'm going to need to write. It's all just conversions. This is just wrapped. Test.rs, here's our little tiny test suite. And here, this diff of the big formatted block I was complaining about, GitHub's diff, is pretty darn good in this case. Way better than the command line diff. Still pretty hard to interpret what this diff is saying. Jay the developer, thank you for noticing my cool scarf. Part of this project is figuring out how to accessorize on stream when all you can see is this. And scarves seem like a good bet. So I'm a scarf person now. I was not a scarf person before a few months ago. But I'm super into scarves and bandanas and neckerchiefs. Okay, let's get down to business. And we're going to have to think hard for the next 30 minutes or so. This is going to be taxing. in general, I need to like write top down, like capture everything this is about in one sentence and then expand on it. It's going to be tough to actually talk while writing a PR, but we'll see how it goes. Dye workwear. I don't know dye workwear. Apparently a scarf enthusiast, though. Okay, this is a Rust client for Tiger Beetle, obvious, that binds to the TB client library written in Zig. Tiger Beetle reviewers will know that, but maybe drive-by observers will be interested to know succinctly what this is. And a lot of this PR is going to be about disclaimers. This is not ready for production, but it is ready for review, early review, and can be suitable for experimentation and feedback. In particular, so I did a new line here because this is Markdown, and I'm used to writing new lines in Markdown and separating kind of like every clause and thought by another line. But that doesn't work very well in GitHub because GitHub has a little bit eccentric rendering for Markdown where it preserves new lines, and almost every other renderer doesn't. So if you write like sentence, 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 they'll just be like very spiky, and it'll actually preserve these new lines when like I want to keep new lines in Markdown for sake of organizing my thoughts, but I want them to be reflowed into paragraphs for rendering, and GitHub doesn't do that. So my GitHub PRs often look like a madman wrote them because they just look like really spiky. They don't look like paragraphs. Not ready for production. Okay, I'm going to say the API is intended to be ergonomic, but the current implementation does a lot of allocations. Does a lot of allocations per request. Some of these can be eliminated with more or less effort, but perhaps not all can be eliminated. I intend that for future work. For the most part, this is just presenting the underlying TB client API with a idiomatic Rust API. Underlying TB client C API as an idiomatic Rust API without extra transformation and semantics added on top. Idiomatic seems to be spelled wrong. I spell that one wrong all the time. The big exception to this is that for queries that return that except for point queries that accept multiple events and return multiple events, this API, all right, I'm going to have to do several sentences here to explain this. The big exception to that is related to in the underlying protocol. These queries can not return events. We have requests and we have responses. These queries can return empty responses for efficiency. And oftentimes, like, the developers here are going to understand that this thing happens in the protocol. The protocol has empty responses that have to be interpreted. But for the sake of context, less informed developers that are just reading, but also just so that the reviewer understands the context in which this PR is working, like, it's important that I surface this and explain it. Like, hey, remember that thing, how the protocol has this, returns empty results and they have to be kind of specially handled? That's going to come into play in this PR. In the underlying protocol, these queries can return empty responses for efficiency. And callers are required to correlate the responses with the requests. This API does that correlation for the user. So they get back one-to-one results for every event submitted. And the reason I'm explaining this so much is because it has a kind of a performance impact. Right now in the code, when we do this correlation step for the results, we take the return vector of results and we create a completely new vector that inserts more results for these empty results. So it's a big reallocation. That's something that our reviewers will care about. So I need to kind of explain it pretty thoroughly in the PR. In the current implementation, this requires allocating a new vector to hold these results. There needs to be a path forward to not making that duplicate vector. Although, somebody's got to pay that cost probably. The user's going to have some solution if we don't do it for them. But if our solution is efficient enough, then the user shouldn't care. One thing we could do is, instead of just, as we're returning results, instead of returning a big vector of results, we could return an iterator of results. And that would allow us to, I'm thinking about all the things we might have to capture to do that. Anyway, I think it's plausible. This could conceivably be optimized by returning an iterator instead. Let's see, what else do we need reviewers to understand about this? Stuff related to the build system. So the build, for now, I don't intend to publish this to crates.io. So Someone who wants to use it must obtain the Tiger Beetle source and build from the Rust. The client's Rust directory. That's not true. That's not how you use this code. Turn the source and link to the Tiger Beetle crate through a path dependency. Can't download it from crates.io. You got to use it off disk. There are brief instructions in the readme.md for this. The readme.md is not hooked up into the... There's a lot of caveats here. This PR only includes cursory documentation. I intend to document as a follow-up. The README is not hooked up to the documentation generator, assuming we don't want this project documented on the website yet. So we don't want this talking on the website yet. This PR only includes a single smoke test. I intend to write tests as a follow-up. This doesn't sound good, but I feel like it's reasonable. This is not a production-ready project yet. Checking out my hair. I intend to write tests as a follow-up. I have not attempted to hook this project. I've not attempted to set up CI for this project, though I think we should. Please help me understand what to do. Please help me understand how to do that. So previously we've looked a little bit through the Tiger Beetle CI scripts, but I am not personally familiar with how Tiger Beetle CI works. And, you know, CI is kind of a Wild West. Every project does it a little differently. So I need the CI guru at Tiger Beetle to just do it for me. Hopefully they'll just push the changes to this PR for me and I don't have to deal with it. That's often the case, that CI is handled by, you know, one person who knows how it works and everybody else is just like, I don't want to touch that. I used to be that person in other projects. Let's see. That's okay. That's a lot of caveats. Something else I wanted to say about the build script. The big exception of this, don't intend to publish to crates.io. I'm going to explain a little bit about how I wired up the build system, because it's a little curious that there's no new Rust client build targets within the Tiger Beetle build script, because every other client has some kind of integration with the Tiger Beetle build script. But when I looked through it and tried to, when it was time for me to do the integration, I decided we just didn't need it. Like anybody who is trying to do the Rust build is going to either be doing it as a developer from inside the Rust crate directory, or if they're a consumer of the crate, they're going to be just linking to that crate from some other directory on their system. and they're not going to need to run the Zig build themselves either. And so the way the Rust build works here is that if the Rust build scripted text that it is being built from within the Tiger Beetle source directory, it goes and runs the Zig build itself to build the C library, and then it just links to that C library. And interestingly, most, if not all, of the bindings for other languages, they have their own Zig build target, and they customize the static library a little. Like they emit more definitions as appropriate for Go or Java, but they have deeper integration. And from what I've seen, like it's fine for our purposes. We can just build the C library as it is with no extra code generation, no extra definitions linked in, and we can just use the plain Tiger Beetle C library. So I haven't done any customization. How the build integration works. The Rust build, when it detects it is building from the Tiger Beetle source, runs zig build clients C, then moves the artifacts it needs into an appropriate place in the Rust source directory to link to. When deployed to Crates.io, we'll have to do something different. Not yet implemented. That should make sense to MattClad. MattClad is going to review this. Alexi, what is Alexi's last name? I know this, but I'm blanking right now. All right, so this explains how the build works. I found no changes were needed to the Tiger Beetle build.zig script to make this work. As such, there is no zig build clients Rust command. This is kind of covering everything that I've got at the top of my brain. Is there anything else they need to know to understand this? I should probably say a little bit about the overall architecture. I think it'll probably be obvious to the reviewers what I'm doing because there's really an obvious way to do this integration. So I should say something about like the basic strategy here of what I'm doing to do the integration of the TB client library. Okay. These bindings follow a simple and obvious implementation strategy. The API is async. When requests are submitted to TB client, ownership of allocations is transferred to TB client. When TB client calls back client calls back, callbacks our code, calls back our, calls our callback, calls our request callback, or completion callback is what they call it, completion callback. The Rust code immediately callback on another thread. These callbacks happen on another thread. The Rust code immediately takes back ownership and sends all relevant data in a message back to the original Rust event loop thread, async event loop thread, for something, for processing. There's not a whole lot of processing going on, though. The Rust API caller can call multiple async requests concurrently. Any resources passed in are not captured in the futures returned, though the client self type is captured, self value reference is captured for the sake of lifetime. So these APIs with FFI bindings, you're often in the situation where the Rust type system and the borrow checker specifically is not really guiding you anymore. Like, you can do anything and it'll pass the type system, and you kind of need to understand the borrow checker enough to use the borrow checker to enforce safety invariance in your unsafe code, in your unsafe pointers, and your FFI calls. So in the case of this API, even though there's no type system reason that we have to, every time we make a request, we get a future back, and that future captures the reference to the client. And the reason this is because we don't want those futures to outlive the client, because we could end up destroying the client before we've destroyed outstanding requests. So by making all of our request futures capture the client pointer, we're forcing those requests to actually be resolved before the client is destroyed. And as I'm saying that, I'm wondering if that's true in the case that futures are dropped. In the case that futures are dropped, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what happens offhand. I probably should just say that in the PR. Yeah, I want to think about that a little more. I think it probably doesn't matter, but I'm not sure. There could be some kind of issue, like if you drop the request future before the server has finished serving that request, and then you destroy the client before the server has finished serving that request. But it might all just work. Certainly the Rust code doesn't care, but whether TB client cares if there's any outstanding, sorry, I'm not talking to the mic. If there's any outstanding requests while TB client is destroyed, I'm not sure. I think basically when you destroy TB client, it blocks. Maybe it doesn't block. I think when you destroy TB client, like, it just sets a flag, an atomic flag, and says, okay, we're done doing any work now. Wait until all the requests are resolved. I'm not entirely sure, though. We'll see. We'll see what happens in review. Maybe it comes up, maybe it doesn't. I'm not very concerned. I'm not very concerned. Even if it is a bug, it's resolvable. Let's go back and read what I just wrote. These bindings follow a simple and obvious implementation strategy. The API is a sink. Requests are sent to TV client. Ownership allocated to client. When TV client calls our completion callback, the Rust code takes ownership and sends relevant data messages back to the original Rust async event loop thread. Call multiple async requests concurrently. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm just really having second thoughts about this whole concept here. Yeah, forget about it. I need to get this PR done. This is getting almost good enough. I'm really kind of struggling to kind of like evaluate objectively whether I'm satisfied with this PR, in the streaming context. Hard to think and stream. Point queries. Yeah, definitely kind of hard to do this PR on stream. Not ready for production and ready to view. Binds Zig. In the future, we may create a pure Rust client. It's not ready for production. It's ready for early review. Yeah, I'm kind of just wanting to call it good enough. This code is pretty good. It's pretty good. Reviewers, this is going to be MatClad. I think. So in GitHub, now's my time to complain about GitHub now. GitHub has gotten very complicated. We have reviewers and we have assignees and projects and milestones and labels. So many concepts on GitHub now. And every project it's a toolkit, and every project has its own workflows with that toolkit, almost as bad as Jira at this point. But the Tiger Beetle workflow is that I assign somebody, and I always forget this, like, do I assign somebody or do I request a reviewer? But I think the way Tiger Beetle does it is that I pick who is assigned to this PR. And MatClad, I choose you. MatClad is Alexei Kladov. MatClad is a Rust genius. I mean, he's just a genius in general, very smart guy. But he's very well known for his work on Rust and Rust Analyzer. And currently he's doing a lot of Zig for Tiger Beetle. He blogs a lot and is usually very insightful and confident in his judgment of programming languages and programming techniques, which I appreciate. So I'm sometimes insightful, but never confident. Like, there's so many caveats in programming and so many different ways to do things, and best practices are always changing. Anyway, I feel like this is done. I'm kind of toast anyway. I'm ready to be done with this. I mean, this is great. This is triumphant culmination of this project we've been working on. Okay, doing it. It's happening. And again, this is not the end of this project, but it is kind of like a pivot point. We've been working toward this for a while, so let's feel some relief that we've finally done it. But we're going to have to come back and keep pushing it to be production ready. And we'll do all that on stream still. We'll do it all on stream. And usually when I write a nice big PR and I'm very happy with my beautiful code, and I've written like a nice dissertation about why my code is so great and should be merged, I will usually spend like the next 30 minutes like just rereading my perfect prose and looking through the patch and finding like last minute things I want to change to make it present beautifully. Do like 5 or 6 force pushes. But I'm not going to sit here and reread my PR on stream. I am kind of going to look at the formatting here and make sure it all looks like it's formatted correctly. Anyway, I think we're good. We're going to wrap up here, guys. Y'alls. Anything else I need to do? Okay, so again, my name is Brian Burson on GitHub, BRSON. And my GitHub pages has links to my socials. I'm doing this stream to create a Rust client all on stream. And today we finally submitted the initial pull request for this project. And we're going to come back and do even more to do all the optimization and the testing and get this documentation. So optimization, testing, documentation, get this ready for production. And I'll come back and do all that on stream. I don't do it on a schedule, but I do usually announce 10 minutes ahead of time on Tiger Beetle Slack on my Mastodon account, which is linked from my GitHub. And maybe X. I think we're trying to announce things on X before I stream. And also we have a playlist going up on YouTube. So this whole series leading up to this point, this is the 21st stream. It's all going up on YouTube. It's all in-queued there right now, ready to go. It's just a matter of kind of cleaning up the playlist and making it presentable as putting like those thumbnails, those title cards on, and getting like a big mouth picture. Like, I'll do a few poses here. Maybe I'm not going to make these thumbnails. But maybe the person making them will like come reach out and do these thumbnails. Like, I got to give a few YouTube faces. Pretend like I'm looking at horrific code over here. Yeah, good thumbnails there. I'm just goofing around now. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate people coming in and chatting and being encouraging and also helping with the bugs and things like that. This has been a very positive experience for me, and I'm very grateful for the people who have participated. I'll be back again soon. See y'all.